Thanks for coming along today. Some great talks today. Very pleasant experience for us organising the event to see so many people coming along. Lunch is coming up after this as well, so I'll try and get through this reasonably quickly. My colleague did this talk, or a variation of this talk, up in Sydney. He took 8 minutes and 2 seconds to do it. So I've stretched it out a little bit. I've got a couple of use cases or with a couple of our customers to talk about a bit later on in the talk. So in case you came late or something, my name's Tristan Goode. I'm the CEO of Aptira. We are a managed services and technology consulting company. We actually started as a managed hosting company, but we've kind of evolved away from doing reasonably complex hosting tasks that sort of didn't fit cookie-cutter applications into a services organisation. We concentrated on APAC, although we now have staff up in Europe as well. And we've had a great fun journey over the last 5 or 6 years with OpenStack. We saw quite early on that OpenStack was going to be a very critical part of infrastructure going forward, and it's obviously evolved beyond just infrastructure into a whole ecosystem of useful tools for all sorts of applications. As has been said a few times today, OpenStack is big. It's really big. It's got more developers than you have. I think somebody once said that there's always going to be more smart people not working for you than working for you, so it's good to take advantage of those smart people. It integrates with so many different vendor products. There isn't really there is one big public cloud company that doesn't integrate that well, but there isn't really any vendor out there that doesn't have something or some touch on OpenStack in some way. I think some of these stats were all gone through this morning, so I'm not going to dwell too much on community and all that sort of thing. As well, this morning I think we know that lots of big people and interesting people use OpenStack. The big users obviously help the evolution of the product and significantly improve the product and platform for all. But it's not always about size, said the actress to the bishop. Sometimes it's about how you use it. We have actually deployed a 2-node OpenStack cluster for a very specific use case, but that is a very unusual and specific case. It certainly is a platform that is more suited to larger deployments. As you can see by these guys, there's some big names there. We have a bunch of big customers that we're really proud of for a fairly small organisation. We're really pleased with, over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, how we've picked up some of the big telcos and big vendors around the place. We do provide generally a vendor agnostic service, and what we typically do to engage our customers is work with various vendors and sometimes even white box our services out through those vendors. I'm going to talk about a couple of our customers later on, specifically Telstra, who we do a lot of business with in various parts of Telstra. Swinburne University of Technology is a newer customer of ours, and the very newest customer we have is State Grid, I think, which was mentioned this morning, which is a huge organisation. We're involved with a very specific part of their migration from their old platforms to their new platforms. So the key reasons for using OpenStack, I think some of this has been covered this morning. Its openness is very important. You can integrate the technology components from hundreds of different companies into a solution. There's less lock-in. A lot of people say no lock-in, but I think there's less lock-in because I think there's always lock-in. Although I'll contradict myself later when I talk about the Telstra project in terms of lock-in. Everybody wants to sell something and wants ongoing work, so I think lock-in is something that can't be completely eliminated. It's an enabler of change too. It provides people with mechanisms to build new types of solutions that can solve problems in new and innovative ways. And one of the most important things is it allows people to adopt new operational models that are the key to building an efficient delivery organisation. So obviously, OpenStack is a huge ecosystem and integration engine. It also is a way of integrating a range of infrastructure solutions, but not just hardware. It's also software as infrastructure, so databases, firewalls, load balancers and things like that can all be brought under the infrastructure umbrella. And they can all be handled in the same programmatic way, allowing you to focus your resources on building new and innovative things rather than sort of managing the infrastructure. OpenStack has grown quite a lot over the last few years. As I said before, we've been involved with it for over 5 years now, and it's grown into 57 projects. I think when Roland did this talk in Sydney, there was 53, and he did it a few months before that, there was 43. Interestingly, I think it's kind of slowed in growth a little bit in terms of number of projects, and I think one of the interesting things too is some of the projects now are we're seeing some of the projects not actually advance. I think there's kind of an evolution going on in terms of the projects that are useful are accelerating still, and some of the projects that have popped up have been sort of single vendor driven or specifically driven or have been superseded by other projects have sort of started to fall by the wayside. And I think that's a good thing. I think sort of ongoing evolution of the OpenStack ecosystem, it's kind of almost Darwinism in terms of software. There's, the things that will succeed keep succeeding, projects keep getting better, and some of the others fall by the wayside. So yeah, almost everything as a service can now be integrated with OpenStack. The other cool thing too is, it's not just niche pieces of technology. You can orchestrate and manage parallel technologies such as containers or Kubernetes and Dockers. Docker also can be sort of done in parallel with your traditional virtual machine-based paradigms. So like I said, OpenStack can make the journey to new operating models now, and it enables this journey. It's not a futurist dream. You can see success stories around this. We've seen some today. I know Vanessa talking before about enabling Agile and DevOps and how that is a very important part of what OpenStack how it helps you change your organisational models. I'll talk a little bit about that as well in the case studies coming up. I've already gone over 8 minutes. I'm beating Roland. That's great. Vendors are using OpenStack as a way to integrate infrastructure into solutions. Customers are deploying OpenStack, not just for infrastructure, but for PaaS and SaaS and IoT and all these other cool buzzwordy type things that are going on. But most of the players in this story still aren't ready. There's still a whole bunch of organisations out there that just aren't ready, not technically or culturally prepared for OpenStack. And I think our good friends at Gartner said 95% of the problems with private cloud are not technology issues. So some of the operational problems can be difficult to solve in a corporate IT environment. And some of these things are sort of, if you need to have Jira tickets to be able to provision a virtual machine, or you can't support chargeback, people and process often sort of dominate the problem here with implementing OpenStack. So if you're not ready to embrace that sort of operational change, you're going to fail. I think that's been highlighted in various talks as well as mine over the past year. So a little bit about us. As I said before, we're the leading OpenStack services company in APAC. Deep involvement in the OpenStack suite of projects. One of the things I wanted to mention too is we're not really heavily on the developer side of OpenStack. You don't have to have a whole raft of developers to be a contributor and be a part of OpenStack. We're very operations focused. We have developers, but most of our work is around deploying and operating and managing OpenStack rather than actually creating. We rely on people like Michael's team. Where's Michael? Hello. And the wonderful developers that we sometimes get a little bit upset with to do that sort of more developer-y start of it. We have 2 representatives on the OpenStack board of directors, which we think is pretty cool, because the only other guys are Rackspace and IBM and HP and Red Hat, I think. And we pride ourselves on looking at things a little bit differently. So that's the sales pitch over. Oh, more sales. I think being involved with the community is a very important part of what we do with business as well. So we've always been heavily behind organising and managing user groups. So user groups are a great place to go and talk to customers or potential customers, to potential staff. Across the world, we've been involved, obviously, with the Australian user group here, and we're hoping that after this event, we can really bootstrap the Canberra user group. Michael as well. We're going to sort of try and target everyone that's here that's a user and needs more information and wants to get more heavily involved to get involved with the user group here in Canberra and kick off with that after this. We're always keen to boost minority participation in OpenStack as well. We're heavily into making sure that some of the lesser favoured members of the community have their say as well. There's been some contentious issues around various distributions and various technologies being sort of steamrolled by some of the more popular technologies, and we're very, very keen as an organisation, because we're a smaller organisation. We like to put our hand up, and we like to put our hand up for some of the smaller orgs. So I'll go into some examples of the customers. This is our newest customer, State Grid. So we didn't actually deploy their OpenStack. Well, I don't think they've ever deployed at all. I think there's still a lot of it to do. We're involved with migrating a lot of their traditional or old enterprise E-type workloads off to their new OpenStack cloud. So we have a tool called Guts. It's open source. If you go to aptira.com, you can find Guts and go off and have a play with it. What Guts does is it's a migration engine from OpenStack to OpenStack, from vSphere type environments to OpenStack, Hyper-V to OpenStack. And one of the big problems with State Grid is they've got about 30,000 virtual machines, I think, at the moment running on vSphere that they need to migrate across to their OpenStack platform. So there's obviously a whole bunch of challenges with that, and one of the things with Guts is because it's a automated API-driven migration tool, we can automate a lot of that based on certain profiles that we pick up with certain parts of their infrastructure as it is now to change it to what it needs to be. So we're applying, I guess, cloud native thinking there in trying to automate that whole process and make that as seamless and hassle-free for them. Swinburne's an interesting case. They needed to balance the needs of their traditional enterprise IT with their research users whose demands are more cloudy. So we've designed a unifying technology solution across their enterprise IT and their research cloud and public cloud deployments. So again, another open source management solution that the uni staff can use to deploy and manage their applications and the infrastructure resources across the IT platform. And the result is a single workflow for infrastructure deployment. And the last one is my favourite one, Telstra. So as we know, Telstra has a huge network, and a lot of that network infrastructure is expensive and inflexible. So we had a consortium Brocade, Red Hat, Noviflow and Cloudify, a couple of other players in there as well. And basically what we're doing is building the underpinning technology of their entire network going forward. They've gone head and everything into a software-defined network strategy. I was very sceptical. We started on the process of engaging with Telstra quite some time ago, and I was fairly sceptical that we could pull this off. We were against some really hefty competition in terms of what the other vendors were offering. And we did. And one of the reasons we did is Telstra did not want to be dependent on any one single vendor. So all the parts of this solution that we're providing for them are one, open source, and two, completely interchangeable vendors. So they can take us out, they can take Brocade out, they can take Red Hat out. So we're delivering a low-cost, wide-area SDN and NFV solution all in one. And when the exec of Telstra says to you, what you're building is the fundamental underpinning of our network going forward, that's a big deal. So we're pretty proud to be involved with that. And a little shout out to Brocade, who traditionally seen as the fibre channel guys or the switching guys, but what they've done is that internally they've recognised that software is a big deal and it's the future. So they've formed a tiger team, for want of a better word, to write open source or open flow based switching technologies that we're using in this. Again, something that they're open sourcing. It can be replaced, and that's certainly solved a problem for Telstra. That's what we like to do. We solve problems. So I guess the point is you need to understand that the software definition world is the future, so you need to get on board with it. You can think ambitiously about what can be achieved, so commit to the software-defined solutions. This success requires collaboration, so that's why it's important to learn from other people's experience. So obviously attending events like this, get involved with the meetup groups, get involved with the community. Community. It's a very important part of OpenStack. And for us, it's facilitating events like this. This is the second one this year. We'll have another one in Melbourne just after the summit, after the Boston summit, somewhere in May, I think that is. It's good to get involved with these things. It's been great for us. It'll be good for you, I promise. So that's it. I went 10 minutes longer than Roland. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Not at all.
Any questions?
Tristan, forgive me, I can't help but ask questions. John Hodgson, I grew up in the days of real big iron and silicon in the operations area.
Yep.
And even then, there were some pretty fundamental concepts that we used to make sure that operation was 100% what the service levels were. Do you think those concepts have changed in this new world, or have we just forgotten them?
Yes, no, I'm so glad you said that, because I forgot completely to mention in one of the things with the engagement in Telstra is it's been a complete mindset change. The guys that we're dealing with there in the networks division are old guys like me who've been around for a while, and have those sort of very rigid and determined ways of doing things. And part of the fun part has been getting them on board Agile, DevOps, and trying to introduce that into their operational methodology. So, yeah, there is, I guess, all that sort of stuff for me anyway, all that previous experience is important in sort of defining how that Agile model kind of fits and kind of keeps things stable and as they're used to. Does that answer your question?
Do you think it's changed much?
Yeah.
Down at the conceptual level?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Yeah, it's totally what they're doing is totally different to what they used to do. It's great to have that prior knowledge of how it used to work, because that does sort of tend to help you form benchmarks and parameters for what you're doing. You know, the more agile and more DevOps oriented stuff you're doing. But yeah, it's absolutely changed. I mean, it's a huge wake up call, and to their credit, but once we pull this off, we won't know. I think about December 15 is our alpha release. We don't even know whether it's going to work yet. That's how cutting edge what we're doing in it. So for those guys to take this on board has been a huge step. We'll know about mid-February, when we actually go production release. And there'll be a whole bunch of press and stuff about it. Telco are going to make a big deal out of this because it's cutting edge stuff. It's that important. And the reality is too, any other telco people in here? Particularly for telcos, it's OpenStack, right? There's no other way to go.